So we spoke a lot earlier on about issues relating to control through the sales cycle and through sales meetings themselves. I want to now explore some of the deeper issues that we started to touch on in the last meeting. Make sense?
Let's do it.
Now, one of the things I've seen salespeople do extremely effectively when positioning themselves and their products is to continue that questions-based approach prior to the out-and-out pitch. So almost so we would need to show you that. So if you could see that kind of approach prior to ever saying, aha, here's what we have.
Yes.
You've seen that work effectively too?
I've seen it work effectively and ineffectively. And where it works very ineffectively is when the salesperson has not been able to drive into the lower level needs that are the ultimate drivers of the larger needs, right? So if we were talking, again, we'll use the example, 5% growth in sales, okay, so that's 5 million. I've seen scenarios where clients or where salespeople have said, if we could help show you a 5% increase in sales, would you be interested? Well, of course the client's going to be interested, right? It's now getting to, okay, so 5% sales growth, fantastic. What needs to happen for that to occur? Well, right now, we don't have an ability to really track our deals. Oh, okay, so track deals. Our salespeople are really distributed and have no way to share information, right? So we can get to a whole list of issues.
Absolutely.
Right? And then we can even go deeper in those issues, right? So we can talk about tracking. Okay, well, how are you doing it today? Well, we're not really doing it very well. We're doing it with a whole bunch of spreadsheets. Well, how would you like to do it? Well, I think if we brought together a single system that allow us to bring the information together, we'd be able to share information a lot better and have greater velocity on our deals and maybe do better deals and share information. And we think that would be a big contributor. Well, how much do you think it would contribute? Well, probably about half of our new sales. Okay, so we're talking about 2.5 million, yes? Yes. Right, so now we've got commitment, we understand the issues. Okay, so if we were to provide you with a system that allowed you to do that, right, do you think that would be worth taking a look at?
So there's much more clarity in that conversation and much more explicitness of focus on what the solution might be and what its specific impact might be. Right?
Absolutely. So again, ones that do it well, do the upfront work very well, right? Of driving into the overall impacts to the business and what needs to change within the organization in order to achieve the overall objective, right? Those that do it poorly stay at the top level, never drive down, and speak in generalities.
And this isn't the classic cliche is that you do that discovery bit in one meeting, then the rest of your sales cycle spent presenting, right? But this is a multi-meeting, multi-engagement effort.
Yes.
Not necessarily over a long period of time, but certainly a consistent effort right through the sales cycle, yes?
Yes. Yeah, and what's also critical is that it's not one executive that makes a decision typically, particularly on large solutions, right? So you need to understand the political dimensions, you need to understand the buying criteria, you need to understand the buying process, and then you need to build relationships with each of the executives that are making the decision.
And that's a good segue because, of course, relationships come up time and time again as, where good process falls into a black hole of oblivion, right, in a sales cycle. Now, talk to me about that a bit then, because this whole principle of rapport building and engagement with the individual, particularly as you move up the organization, it's tough work.
It's funny, when we talk about rapport with sales executives, a lot of them, talk about something in their office, talk about something on the wall, talk about their golf game, talk about the weather. And these are important things, right? So these, allow us to relate to one another as human beings rather than just information gatherer and information provider. And, I think that's critical, and I think anyone that's in sales should have at least some common capability to do that, or at least a baseline capability. And if they don't, maybe they shouldn't be in sales. But when I think about rapport, I'm really talking about relating to the executive, right? Relating to their business issues. If an executive is going to spend time with you, they want to be sure that they're going to get something out of it. And unless they think that they can communicate with you on an equal playing field, then they're really not going to have a lot of time for you. And salespeople need to know this. They need to know that that individual is an expert in their market.
Yes.
We're not expecting you to be an expert in the market, but at least have an understanding, have a fundamental understanding of how that organization makes money. how that organization operates, the key drivers of performance for that organization or for that individual within the organization. And then to also understand what others are doing in that industry, right? Because that seems to be the number one question that executives will ask of a solution provider. Who else is doing this? What are others doing? And if you can't answer that, then you're not adding value.
It's a fine line, isn't it? I mean, I've watched a number of salespeople truly embarrass themselves by trying to be too smart on subject matter that they can never be experts at. And the classic example is when people meet the CFO. Mm-hmm. And the number of salespeople I've watched try to make some very bold claims on very deep financial principles and really just die. And I think the principle is that I've seen anyway is, you've got to understand some basics. I don't think you can be in business, not as a commercial salesperson, business developer, or relationship builder, if you don't understand some basic mechanics of how businesses operate. Mm-hmm. But I think unless you are truly a graduate from one of those disciplines, in this case finance, my experience is that there's absolute forgiveness if you don't know the deep or proprietary language that individual organizations or disciplines use. Is that your experience too?
Yeah, and what I do is I bring it back to the purpose, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, this all comes down to structuring the discussion. Mm. So we bring it back to purpose, and the purpose of the meeting is not to show them how great and smart of a person you are. It's to seek to understand their needs in relation to your organization and the solutions that you offer. Mm. So when you frame it in that way, there really should be no reason for you to launch on a tirade of the latest and greatest financial modeling techniques, if we're talking about the CFO.
Yes.
But if the CFO says, well, we want to reduce EBITDA, or we want to increase EBITDA for that matter, then we're going to say, okay, great. What are some of the key drivers that are moving you towards that earnings, towards those earnings, right? What are some of the cost levers that we need to look at? What are maybe some revenue generation ideas that your organization is contemplating? Ultimately, we should not be telling the client anything at this point.
No.
Right? This should all be inquiry. And there may be opportunity for us to tell when the client says, well, who else have you worked with? Well, we should have a clear idea of that, right? What kind of results have other clients achieved? Well, yes, we should know that as well, right? But I would highly recommend, like you said, unless they have just graduated from the latest and greatest academy on finance, that they probably not engage in a detailed financial discussion with the CFO.